Geoverse Part 2 To Love is Human Chapter 6 Of Science and Friendship. Several weeks passed by in a heartbeat as John and I assisted Sorrow with the construction of his stabilizer. The shocking news that he was responsible for sending me to Equestria in the first place made me all the more determined to help him. "That's good," Sorrow said, as John and I lowered a piece of metal into position. "Hold it there." With the flick of a switch, he started welding the piece into place, putting on a mask to shield his eyes from the bright flames. "How does this work anyway, Doc?" I asked carefully, bearing in mind the fact he was busy. I mean, portals to other universes. Sorrow stopped welding, removed the mask and looked at me. "It's simple," he said, as if talking to an idiot. "The going theory of the cause of the Big Bang is that two universes collided with one another and are now constantly reforming into one universe. The collision itself was a Big Bang, and the vast, ever-expanding universe is really two universes collapsing into each other. With me so far?" I think so," I replied, giving John a curious look. "But what does this have to do with this?" "Well, I have a theory that black holes are the key to bridging two universes together," Sorrow explained. "They're gravitational anomalies so dense that they warp time and space around them, and not even light can escape the singularity. I've been using the results of the Large Hadron Collider in Geneva to base my theories on trans-universal travel." He took a deep breath before continuing. "So far the results have been promising. My theory is that black holes are dense enough that they should be able to pull two universes together, and that the Big Bang was caused by a supermassive black hole." "So you're saying that I fell through a black hole to get to Equestria?" I asked, raising an eyebrow skeptically. "A small one," Sorrow replied, using his fingers to indicate something the size of a postage stamp. "But yeah, pretty much." "Wait a second," John piped up. "Aren't black holes supposed to, rip you apart or something?" "I've been doing some research into the relationship between gravitational and magnetic fields," Sorrow said. "It's all very complicated, so I'll try to simplify it as best I can. I use magnets to flatten the black hole, and that pulls it apart enough so that a solid object can pass through without being torn apart." As he talked, he made squashing motions with his hands. "How does it work, anyway?" John replied. "Wouldn't someone getting sucked into a black hole just be squished into the hole? It's not supposed to be a portal, is it?" "According to some theories, black holes are actually the entrance to interstellar wormholes, and quasars are the exit," Sorrow said, as if talking to a couple of bored schoolboys. "That is what my current theory relies on. Black holes are supposed to be one-way tickets to another part of the universe. I just make them go to another universe entirely." "Why do you call it another universe?" I asked. "Wouldn't it be another dimension?" "Another dimension implies that we would be existing in a state other than length, width, depth, or time." Okay," John said, scratching the back of his head. "Well, why don't you call it another world?" "That implies that the other world exists in our universe." "Another plane of existence?" I suggested. "That implies we're going to hell." "So, another universe," John checked. "A place where different laws of nature and physics apply, yes." Sorrow looked pleased that we finally understood what he was saying. He put his face mask back on and continued welding, as John and I simply shrugged. "Twilight!" Rarity called in her sing-song voice. The purple unicorn poked her head out from the flap of the tent, which was half the size of the Ponyville library. "Morning, Rarity," she said sleepily. "I've brought you some supplies, darling," Rarity said, holding up a bag with her magic. Twilight took it and opened it, revealing a small hoard of food and water. "Thanks, Rarity," Twilight said, hugging the white mare. Rarity returned the hug eagerly, before breaking off and looking around. "Where are the others?" she asked. "Rainbow Dash is away getting firewood, and Pinkie Pie is, well, being Pinkie Pie," Twilight replied with a chuckle. "Have you had any trouble from the wildlife?" Rarity said, looking into the tree line. "Not a peep," Twilight said with a smile. "I don't know what Fluttershy said or done, but it's helped." Rarity returned the smile before hugging Twilight one more time. "I have to return to the boutique, darling," she said. "If I leave Sweetie Belle unattended for too long, things tend to explode." "I understand, Rarity," Twilight replied. "Thanks for visiting, and be sure to tell Spike not to worry." "I will, Twilight," Rarity said as she trotted away. "Take care now." Twilight waved to her friend and went back into the tent. Inside were rolls of parchment covered with tally marks. Kicking at them, Twilight flopped down onto her bed. 3 weeks, she muttered, and nothing. She sighed as she looked at the ceiling and allowed fond memories of moments past to invade her mind. Stifling her sobs, Twilight composed herself and sat up. Levitating a quill and parchment over, she composed a letter. "Dear Princess Celestia, you've probably heard by now that I have been camping out in the Everfree Forest for the last 3 weeks. If so, you'll know and hopefully understand why I am doing this. If not, then I'll explain. It's all in the name of love. While trying to contact Geo using that spell you helped Spike to find, thank you, my friends and I spoke to the spirit of Discord. Yes, Discord. He told us that Geo's spirit wasn't in Equestria because he was back in his own universe. Because I know Geo so well, I know that he's trying his utmost to return to Equestria, and to me. Which leads me to the Everfree Forest. I'm camping out at the exact spot where we first met him. When he comes back, I know that he'll arrive here. I guess what I'm trying to say here is this. Never give up on the one you love, and I don't intend to. If it takes 10 years or 100 years, I will see him again. And another lesson I've learned is this. Your friends can help you get through what seems like the darkest of times. They are always there with a comforting word or a shoulder to cry on. It's because of my friends that I managed to drag myself out of the pit of despair and onto the path of hopefulness. And I couldn't be more thankful to have them by my side. Don't worry about me, Princess, I'll be fine, but if you'd like to come and visit me, look out for the giant tent in the middle of the forest. Rarity went a bit overboard with it. Your love-struck but still faithful student, Twilight Sparkle. Twilight wrapped the letter up and sent it off using her own magic. Lying on her back again, she closed her eyes and let the memories invade her mind once again. John and I frantically pressed buttons as we shouted at each other. "There!" John said, pointing wildly. "Where?" I asked fearfully. "Blam!" "Fuck!" I shouted, throwing the controller down. Sorrow cackled madly, his arms raised in triumph. "I win again," he said gleefully. "Nuts to this," I said. "I'm more of a PS3 guy. Fucking Xbox." Sorrow laughed. "Okay, I get it," he said, nodding. "You're a sore loser. No big deal." I glared at him and decided to change the subject. "Is the stabilizer complete yet?" I asked, still seizing from the drubbing I'd received. "Yes," Sorrow replied. "But—" "It is?" I interrupted, punching the air in celebration. "What are we waiting for? Let's get going!" I made a break for the gateway, but Sorrow grabbed my shirt as I ran past, forcing me to the ground. "It needs to charge first," he said flatly. "And even then, there's no guarantee that you'll actually end up in Equestria." I grumbled. "How long will it take to charge?" I asked, getting to my feet. 3 days, Sorrow said, coughing. I slapped my forehead. "Okay, fine, 3 days," I said through gritted teeth. "Not much I can do about that." Sorrow patted my shoulder. "Hey, Doc," John asked. "How are we gonna get back once we get over there?" "See that big guy over there?" Sorrow replied, indicating a large robotic vehicle behind a table with various bits of machinery and hardware attached to it. That's a Dreadbot. I made it to be a beastly powerhouse that can haul anything. It has a 500 horsepower engine that runs off algae. It can reach speeds in excess of 30 miles an hour, and it's even powerful enough to tear down a small building. He smiled. I call him Tiny, he said as he turned to the robot. Tiny, here boy, he said with a whistle, beckoning the robot. The large metal machine activated with a deep series of beeps, then began moving out from behind the table. It rolled on 2 treads out to the floor and looked like a tank that was the size of a Volkswagen Beetle, with a battering ram on the top. It rolled close to us, causing John and I to fall backwards. It came to a stop just before running into Sorrow, who smiled and began rubbing the machine as if petting it. "Ah, that's a good boy, Tiny," he said, displaying more affection towards a machine than was humanly sane. "You came as soon as Daddy called, didn't you? Didn't you? Ah, good boy." John and I looked at each other, dumbstruck. "So, is Tiny coming with us?" "Of course he is," Sorrow replied. He continued to pet the robot. "You're gonna be carrying the equipment and materials for me to build a new lab in the other universe, aren't ya, boy? Aw, that's a good boy." The robot made a series of noises which indicated that it was responding to the affection in a positive way. "Well, you two are more than welcome to come back," I said as I dragged myself off the floor again, "because I'm sure as hell not." "But you'll come back if it's the wrong universe, though?" Sorrow asked, matter-of-factly. "Yes, of course," I replied. "I don't give a fuck how many dimensions I have to travel through. All that matters to me is getting back to Equestria." I slammed my fist down on the nearby table. "These next 3 days had better fucking fly by."